Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending where you are. It's a pleasure to receive all of you here today in this meeting with clerks and secretary generals about a topic that I have to say it's very close to my heart, which is how to merge artificial intelligence and new technologies into the parliamentary operations and these themed and very cherished institutions for us. I see that all colleagues are here. Um, let's before we move forward, we have interpretation in three different languages today. So just to see if everyone is on the same page, if you can hear the interpretation. Uh, hello, José Pedro. Can you hear me in Spanish? You're mute.
Hello, Luis. I have a problem. I can hear in Spanish.
Debe ir abajo en la interpretación y
No,
clicar en español.
sí, ya lo puse, pero no aparece.
I'll ask the interpretation for some help here. Well, in the meantime, José Pedro, allow me to check with Vitor. Vitor, can you hear me in Portuguese? Vitor, você me escuta? Você me escutou? Você me escutou através do intérprete?
Não, só em português agora.
Um instante, por favor.
Ahora en español ya escucho.
José Pedro, can you hear me in Spanish through the interpreter?
El intérprete no dice nada.
Testing one more time. José Pedro, can you hear me in Spanish? No? Our staff is asking just a moment, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. This is Marcial Diaz. I'm in charge of the translation. One of the interpreters just told me that she was unassigned as an interpreter, and she was supposed to be translated right now. So please assign her again as interpreter. Her name is America Soto. She's online. She's waiting for you to reassign her as interpreter.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcel.
Well, I will try to have the opportunity to say hello to my friend Eric. It was a long time that I can see him, and it's a pleasure to see again. I miss you in Angola, Eric.
Yes.
But your friend that it's coming, it went there. It's very comfortable to work with him.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, José Pedro. Indeed, I couldn't make it to Angola. We had the pleasure of meeting in Bahrain. But yes, my colleague Jean-Philippe spoke highly of you. So I'm glad that you got the chance to meet him. And hopefully we'll meet next in Geneva in the spring.
Well, José Pedro, José Pedro, can you hear me now in Spanish?
Sí, perfecto. Lo escucho perfecto, sí.
Vitor, can you hear me in Portuguese?
I'm hearing just in English. But it's okay. For me, no problem.
Okay, I think we can go with English. Well, so thank you so much, all of you, for your participation. It's truly an honor to be your moderator today on this topic that, as I mentioned, is very close to my heart on how to bridge all the new elements in Parliament with new technologies and these very traditional institutions that we work with or we work in. So thank you so much. I will do introduction section in 1 minute, each one of you, for you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit on your interest about this particular topic. If you allow me, I'll do this alphabetically. Invite David Wilson, the clerk from the Parliament of New Zealand, to introduce yourself in 1 minute. David?
Kia ora koutou from New Zealand. I'm David Wilson, the Clerk of the House of Representatives here, as a Secretary General to some other jurisdictions. And I've had a growing interest in this because we are increasingly using technology to improve our services, to increase the speed of them, particularly the accessibility of information to elected members and the public. And also a sense that there is this new developing technology, particularly artificial intelligence, where and the kind of thinking that's happening now before we get into using it.
Thank you so much, David, for your introduction. Eric, would you like to introduce yourself to us as well?
Sure, my pleasure, Luis, and thank you very much for the invitation to be on this panel with such distinguished colleagues, some of whom I know, others I don't yet. My name is Eric Jantz. I am the acting clerk or Secretary General of the House of Commons in Canada. We have been keenly looking at technology for decades, and I guess AI is just the next version, if you will, the next wave to hit us. I am far from an expert. We have some very, very keen, bright people within our organization who have spent a lot of time and energy looking at this, looking how we can leverage it for ourselves, for our clients, for Canadians generally. So like David, I'm very interested to hear what others are doing in this field and see what we can all take away collectively from this. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Eric. José Pedro, would you like to introduce yourself to us as well?
Sí, cómo no, muchas gracias Luis. Es un placer volver a participar en este
Of
seminario.
course, it's a pleasure to be again in the seminar. Just as Eric and David said, for us, this is something new. We are working our parliament before anything. I'm the secretary of the Chamber of Senators of Uruguay. And we are working with technologies as well, trying to keep up to speed with all the processes and technologies that are available. We haven't gone into depth with intelligence, with artificial intelligence. So this is a seminar that's very interesting for us in order to obtain different proposals and to be able to start applying them in the future. Thank you.
Pedro, thank you so much. Mark, would you like to introduce yourself to us as well?
Sure. Thank you, Luis, and thank you to Buslatech for putting this panel together on this subject, which is on top of mind for all of us. I'm Mark Stoddard, and I'm president of Essential Legislative Technologies. My company works in on the big challenge of modernizing how laws are drafted, amended, consolidated, compiled, published. We work with governments across the U.S. government, and parliaments around the world. Yes, this panel is one that is quite relevant since we see governments probing AI, generative AI. We see it all the time. We're exploring it as well, and so I really look forward to a very interesting discussion today. Couldn't be more timely. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Mark, for your introduction as well. And finally, Vitor, would you like to introduce yourself to us?
Muito bem. Vou falar em português, qualquer coisa eu mudo para o inglês se for necessário. Então, queria dar boa tarde, agradecer, Luiz, pelo convite. Meu nome é Vitor Marcel Pinheiro. É uma honra estar aqui com vocês nessa tarde. Eu sou o chefe da assessoria jurídica da Secretaria-Geral da Mesa. Estou aqui representando o doutor Gustavo Saboia, o nosso...
Vitor,
Oi.
só um instante. Eu creio que o inglês, the English is not working.
Okay. I'll move to English and you guys check the correction.
Thank
you very much.
Vitor.
Okay, so let's rewind it. So, good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be here. I'd like to thank Luis for the invitation for this panel. My name is Victor Marcel Pinheiro. I am Chief Advisor to the Secretary General of the Federal Senate of Brazil. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Gustavo Saboia, which is our Secretary General. And I say that the interest for the Federal Senate of Brazil on this topic on AI is twofold. On one hand, we have here a current discussion in Brazil at our National Congress about how to regulate in general artificial intelligence and new technologies in general. And in the other hand, we are also studying, reflecting on how can we use these new technologies on our current and future activities. So this is definitely a timely debate, and it's very good to be here.
Thank you, Vitor, for your introduction as well. Well, allow me to bring my first question to you, David. AI applied to parliamentary operations is not something new, it's not a novelty. However, we have seen a democratization of its usage going way beyond the IT domain with easy to use interfaces like ChatGPT, Google Bear, to name a few, and enabling the integration of these technologies into our parliamentary frameworks. With this context in mind, David, I pose this question to you and to the other distinguished clerks, secretary generals, and participants. What are the key traditional processes in the daily operations of your legislative process that you envision the possibility for enhancement through AI and other emerging technologies? David, I will ask you to answer these in 3 minutes. You're going to see there is a clock here to help you. And then after that, I will invite all the other colleagues to make their comments in also 3 minutes. David, please feel free to use the floor.
Okay, thanks, Luis. Well, I think there's a lot of potential use for our AI, and the one area that we're already making use of it through automated speech recognition is in the preparation of Hansard, the official transcript of proceedings in Parliament. But there are considerably more areas where I think we could make use of it in doing captioning of proceedings for deaf and hard of hearing people. At the moment, that is done by people, but if we can integrate our speech recognition and captioning, there's a good possibility of using it there, possibly for interpretation into New Zealand Sign Language as well. There's a real shortage of sign language interpreters in the country, and they're often busy assisting the deaf community, and we can't really make use of them for Parliament as much as we'd like to. So in terms of making Parliament more accessible, there are some really good possibilities. Another one that we're thinking about but haven't yet done anything about, but I think will be an area for the future, is in processing public submissions to parliamentary committees. Sometimes we'll receive 100,000 submissions or more. We have quite a small secretariat to process them. And while I don't think we'd want to replace the human element completely, the initial sorting of them, the flagging of submissions that might contain defamatory content or unparliamentary content to staff for checking, the gathering of information about people who wish to present to committees in person. And I think there are quite a lot of possibilities there for sorting and managing huge volumes of papers. There's potentially scope for AI to assist in the giving of advice as well. I don't think, given how situational and I suppose subtle advice often needs to be, I don't know that I'd see AI taking a leading role there, but in terms of finding information quickly, particularly in the debating chamber in the heat of the moment, it may be useful in finding precedents and searching through rules to assist the clerk who's in the chamber in advising members and particularly the presiding officer. So I'm not sure. We have been experimenting with a chatbot of our own. and we've let it look at our parliamentary rules and precedents. And it is quite good at sorting through information and finding relevant entries, which is different from giving advice, but it could be quite a useful tool for doing that. Potentially also in preparing the official record, if it's going to transcribe what members are saying, it could probably provide in the future a first draft of the journals of the House, which is, I suppose, the minutes of the Parliament. And, you know, there are a lot of possibilities. The final one I thought of is possibly in assisting us in drafting amendments to bills for members as well, which is really time consuming. It would need a lot of teaching to be good at it, but I think there are, you know, a lot of future possibilities that are worth consideration.
Thank you so much, David, for your considerations. Actually, I took a note on many of them. And this case from the chatbot, I would like to hear more in the future, because we heard on some very interesting experiments in that, both from the political science point of view, but also from the public administration on how to get static data. But it's a discussion that we can deep dive later on in the conversation. Eric, would you like to, in 3 minutes, to share your comments to what David just said as well?
Sure, it would be my pleasure. And in fact, a lot of similarities with what David described in his parliament, some similar initiatives at the House of Commons. I've kind of divided them up: short-term, medium-term, long-term. So short-term, again, like David, we are about to launch the use of automated speech recognition technology to assist with the transcription of chamber and committee proceedings. We also will be using it, hopefully fairly soon, in terms of closed captioning to assist people watching proceedings either live in the gallery or via our broadcasting system called ParlView. We also hope to use AI to scan parliamentary documents, such as petitions and order paper questions via optical character recognition. So those are kind of some short-term initiatives. Medium term, we hope to use new technologies AI to help index sessional papers. Sessional papers are the hundreds of usually government documents that are tabled in the House, and some of them are very, very large, but they contain all sorts of information. And we hope to use AI to make that more readily accessible. We also hope to leverage technology to improve committee witness experience, the whole process that committee witnesses go through from the beginning, initial contact to be a witness, to the end when they have to submit to any expenses they might have, to make that a better system. And also to use technology to assist with revising procedural text to ensure plain language and accessibility to the public and to our parliamentary clients. And longer term, again, as was mentioned, AI could be used, and I know it's already used in some jurisdictions for legislative drafting. That's something we're potentially interested in. Also for ensuring digital trust via verifiable credentials technology, for instance, for our online voting system, for the confidential submission of notices for the order paper, witness brief submissions, help manage all that. And we're considering the possibility of enterprise AI to build a system with access to our own data to help with procedural research, the drafting of motions, the drafting of speakers' rulings, etc. And for this, we need to set things up now. So lay the foundation now with a new and improved information management policy, so that we capture the right information, that we classify it, that we treat it in the right way so that it's accurate, stored correctly so that we can access it quickly and accurately. And no doubt there's going to be other technology that will emerge in the very near future, and we look forward to that and to seeing how we can leverage that as well.
Well, thank you so much, Eric. I took several notes here as well, but what caught my attention is your concern about having the possible usage of AI to have a plain language about legislative procedure. For example, I've talked to many colleagues, and even for colleagues working specifically with legislative procedures, there are some words, some terminologies that even for them is difficult to understand. And for us, we use artificial intelligence in our library to point out possible words that could be improved to have a more plain language to improve accessibility, etc. So
As
Please.
clerks, we like to say we like to keep the language complicated and archaic, so it keeps us gainfully employed. But that's probably a very short-term way of looking at things. We should be opening it up and making it more user-friendly. You're absolutely right, Louis.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and I think this is just outstanding. José Pedro, would you like to comment on that as well in 3 minutes?
Sí, como no, Luis.
Of course. We started from the base that we're not using artificial intelligence. We haven't even thought about using it in the parliament. However, before I start telling you, as Eric and David did, what we did is thinking about what we could potentially do if we used it. And I agree 100% with what my colleagues said. We use other kinds of tools, especially in the legislative system, when it comes to business process managers. The flow of the process of the laws are installed, and we know the steps that we should take within a law when it comes from the executive power or any other legislator. But when it comes to the artificial intelligence, it's not that we are against its use, which is what we can say when it comes to the chambers. We are not using them. But in September, we had a World Congress where over 40 or 50 people participated, and we talked about the conditions of the future, and one of the subjects was artificial intelligence. And all of us, we're surprised with all the tools that are available. And maybe in this seminar, we will be able to see all the training. So it would be incredible, as David and Eric said, would have broadcastings from the commissions of the sessions of the Senate, where we also have sign language, because by law, it has to be included. But we could use artificial intelligence in order to close caption automatically the sessions, and so people can read and watch what the conversation is about at the time. Also using the artificial intelligence for the digitalization process we have within the archive and the administrative files and the law bills that are supposed to be digitalized in order to use less space. Those are all matters where we will be able to use the artificial intelligence when the parliament realizes that it's a tool that can be managed. Logically, there has to be a person behind. Of course, the human component has to be involved, and it will be very important for us and the accessibility of the general public.
Thank you for your remarks. Well, allow me to invite now you, Mark. Would you like to share your thoughts on this matter as well?
Sure. Thank you, Luis. I think at Accentral, in our work with legislatures and parliaments, we're seeing much of what has already been surfaced here in terms of the use of AI and enhanced search, summarization, the creation of testing minutes and journals and so forth. Library of Congress here in the US is testing right now using AI, generative AI, on summarization of bills. A big task that they have is to summarize all legislation as it is introduced in Congress, and we've been helping with the Library of Congress on some comparison tools already, using natural language processing to help with when they look for similarity between bills that have been introduced so they can find those bills that maybe they have already summarized, so they don't have to keep repeating their work. And so that's already been very effective, but they're looking to do more enhanced efforts to work with summarization through AI. So it's been very interesting to see this happening. But we're also seeing sort of alongside that, the development of more governance about AI and how it can be used in parliaments and legislatures, and how what appropriate uses are. With the unleashing of generative AI, we see staff members and member offices beginning to play with it, experiment, and do things. And so we're seeing right alongside it in many governments the development of further policies and how to use it, which it's hard to do because it's such a moving target at this moment and kind of coming at us all so fast. So I think generally we're seeing much of the same, which has been discussed, and I look forward to digging deeper as we go forward together on this panel.
Thank you so much, Mark, for your considerations. Vitor, would you like to share your thoughts and close this round?
Obrigado, Luiz. Será que me ouve em português? Não, a tradução? Não? Eu não consegui nem te ver. It's okay. So tá bom.
Maybe it's better for you to speak in English if you don't mind.
Okay, no problem at all. So from our point of view here at the Senate, we are, of course, testing some new tools. We are testing a tool, as said before, to transcript parliamentary speeches. We have a full department of people who work actually transcripting on the transcription of speeches, and we are developing new tools to make it simpler and faster. And right now, I believe in the US it's pretty much the same. Each member of parliament has freedom to work with his own staff as he thinks it's better. So I know of some colleagues, some staff members here from the Senate and our Chamber of Deputies who actually are using generative AI, for example, to draft speeches. And this has raised some questions, but so far as I know, some of them are testing this to get a sample of a speech and then making better with a human, with a staff member working on this first version. But I think that the future brings new possibilities. We are right now here at the Senate working to develop tools or plugins from current tools to help to draft legislation. I'm not saying that in the near future, from an institutional point of view, the Federal Senate will move to an AI approach to drafting legislation, but we've seen some improvements on available tools that are available right now in terms of making, as a colleague said before, making legislation or draft more clear, simpler, without any missing points. So I think in the near future, we will see here in Brazil an expansion on these tools about making better, helping draft legislation, not to substitute our staff members, but to help them make legislation clear. And one second initiative that we are trying to think about and we to develop new tools is about so-called data-driven legislation. Right now, we've seen some tools from social sciences, public policy experts that we're trying to bring to Parliament, to Federal Congress. How can we use AI-assisted data analysis to better improve public policy seen from a parliamentary perspective? This is very, very fresh. We're starting to make studies right now. How can we, in the near future, make this possible for our members of Parliament? But we're trying to see some possibilities to get these tools and use them to help us to better comprehend the public data that we have, the vast amount of public and private data that Parliament receives, and how to draft better legislation.
Thank you so much, Vitor, for your remarks and your considerations closing this round. Well, allow me to bring my second question to you, Eric. And I have to say that I have drafted this question specifically for the House of Commons, because this is a particular domain that the House of Commons is doing amazingly well on transition to a service-based approach to legislative services. And just making a recognition here, the leadership of Christoph and Harry on this domain is just paramount for this effort to move forward. It's truly inspiring to see what you're doing. So my question to you, with comments from the colleagues, in the evolution of the parliamentary operation towards a more service-based approach, where the delivery of high standard services to staff and MPs is paramount, and efficiently handling requests for legislative services becomes a key factor in supporting the diverse needs of MPs, their staff, and the committees. So, Eric, drawing from your extensive experience in overseeing such procedures and requests, how do you see AI and advanced legislative technologies playing a role in enhancing the management of these requests? And my second question, if I may, how would this impact the office of the clerk or the secretary general in its daily operations? Eric, I think you're muted.
Indeed, I am. Sorry about that. Excellent question. Thank you very much. And thank you for the kind words regarding the work that's already been undertaken by Chris and a whole little army of people here at the House of Commons. I think maybe I would start by saying, I think we can all agree that we all have very demanding parliamentary clients. Who they themselves are under great pressure from constituents, from their parties, etc. So yes, they make a lot of requests of us and they want things quicker, better, faster. So AI should be able to assist us in responding to client needs and requests more quickly and more efficiently. So as an example, assisted speech recognition should allow us to produce the blues, kind of the first draft of transcripts more quickly, and also reduce the turnaround time for the edited committee transcripts, which now, given the volume that we have, the number of committees we have, the number of meetings, can take up to 7 days to produce those. So we're hoping that we can reduce that turnaround time, again, by leveraging technology. Finding information for clients will hopefully become easier, or helping clients find information themselves via AI-generated indexes, public search, publication search tools, etc. So what we hope to do is to build on the successes of our digital business product teams. So what we have done now for some time is we've embedded technical and business experts together to achieve service-based approaches and outcomes. At the moment, AI is not necessarily seen as a means to an end, but a way to support current outcomes and a vision for more integrated services to members and the public. As we want to use small, or continue to use small, agile experiments within existing projects to determine the viability of AI, and then seek to expand beyond these smaller experiments. So I spoke in my first response to the committee witness project that we have underway. So we're considering using AI to manage the workflow and optimize the processes, reporting on the bottlenecks, where things slow down, where there are irritants for witnesses. And then that will give us data to improve on those services, perhaps revise procedures, reassign staff accordingly to be able to better meet with demands and needs. So we're also currently laying a foundation of enterprise data for business information and business intelligence, so that we can leverage AI in the future to help us make choices around projects, optimization, or to help strategize. So I see I'm running out of time, so I'll maybe leave it at that. But certainly it's impacting the role of myself as Clerk Secretary General, but the whole team, the whole House administration.
Thank you so much, Eric, for your considerations. David, would you like to comment on that as well?
Thank you. And I think my comments will mirror Eric's to a large degree. I see a lot of the same possibilities. About 10 years ago, we moved our committee system from being mostly a paper-based hard copy one to an electronic one. And that had the major benefit of getting papers to elected members much faster than we'd been able to do previously. As they arrived, they were able to be checked quite quickly and then passed on to members. And that was really one of the major benefits of, adoption of technology at that time. And I see that AI technology has, significantly more that it could contribute in that area, if it's able to help us with the initial processing of the huge numbers of public submissions that we often receive, and the flagging of those that might raise some of the issues I mentioned before. I think one of the big benefits could be getting material to MPs faster, to give them more time to read it and prepare. And there have been instances where, just because of the volume of papers received from the public, public hearings have had to be delayed until members are able to acquaint themselves with that. So the faster we can get material to them, having done the checks we need to first, the better. And I think there's a really great possibilities for technology to assist there. I think in searching documents that are not particularly accessible to members and the public, our standing orders, our rules of procedure, the speaker's rulings, our precedents, AI technology could be very helpful in narrowing down people's searches, doing index searching for them. One of the areas that I'm not responsible for, but members sometimes have difficulty with, are a set of rules called speakers' directions, which are the rules about their expenses, their entitlements, how they manage their offices. And I think there's a great potential for AI to assist them in searching and understanding those a little bit better as well. Often they'll need to know quite quickly, can I book this flight? Can I use my parliamentary credit card for this purpose? And it should be able to take them to the rules much more quickly. I'm a little bit hesitant about them relying completely on its advice about whether an expense is legitimate or not, but it should at least be able to point them to the rules so that they can make that decision. I think, as Eric said, it could also help us get our transcripts prepared more quickly. We do have a pretty quick turnaround. Question time is usually transcribed and published, the first draft within 2 hours, because members have put a high premium on receiving it quickly. They want to share it with constituents. They want to be able to search it themselves. And it could assist us with that as well. And then one other area I thought of, as Eric was speaking, was around a lot of the research requests that our parliamentary library receives from members. AI may be useful in sorting those and in doing a first cut of advice back to MPs, because of its ability to search things almost instantaneously in a way that a human can't. I think there's a lot of future possibilities. And I'm not too concerned about the impact on our roles. I think it can enhance them. I don't think it will supplant them.
Thank you, David, for your considerations. José Pedro, would you like to share your thoughts on this matter as well?
Sí, en mi intervención pasada hablé de
Yes, in my previous intervention, we're not substituting the tool of artificial intelligence. We are using it as a tool, specifically in the flow of bills. But what I wanted to comment is, at the time I'm at the Senate, but I spent 15 years in the House of Representatives from the 2000 to 2015, and thinking in that, and what they were just mentioning, Eric and David, when I was at the House of Representatives, we installed, it's the electronic calling. It's something for the administrative tasks. It's called PPN, and this had the goal of reducing the use of paper and trying to do everything electronically through the computers, which is a whole administrative process. And that was done by staff members. That was the first evolution that took place in the House of Representatives, and the Administrative Commission started to applying it. And then in 2015, I moved to the Senate, and at the Senate, the documents online have been established as well. It's all electronic for the staff and for all of the members. That started happening, and it was moved later to legislators. They could all use that electronic file. They don't need to use paper to send a request, for example, of medical leave or specific material. So taking into account what artificial intelligence means and the advantages that can bring to us, taking also considering that this electronic file was empowered by the staff, by the members, because it was then who promoted there. They knew how it worked. So I think it will be very helpful for us to have an artificial intelligence that will help us have a streamlined process with which we will be able to solve certain issues that will allow the staff members and also the legislators of the legislative power in their capabilities to use that procedure of this electronic file with the goal of having a modernization of and to streamline every branch of the legislative power.
Pedro, thank you for your remarks, your considerations.
Thank you, Jose Pedro, for the
I want
remarks.
to invite you, Vito, to share your thoughts again in 3 minutes. I think if you can speak in English, I think it would be a bit better for us to hear and understand you. Apologies for that.
Perfectly, no problem, no problem. So, getting just a small remark on the colleagues were saying about the electronic legislative proceedings. We also moved here at the Brazilian Federal Senate and our Congress in general in 2014 to 100% digital uh, parliamentary procedure. So right now, every document here in the Chamber of Deputies or Federal Senate in Brazil are digitalized. We don't work with papers, physical papers anymore. So this gave us the opportunity in 2020 to move to other technologies, other digital opportunities for our proceedings. In 2020, we adopted, of course, during the pandemic of COVID-19, the remote deliberation system, which we are still using to some extent right now. And thinking specifically about AI in this new environment, I think we have the opportunity here to better operate many demands that we have from members, from our staff colleagues, from external public, for example, journalists, about, I think what David has said, about our legislative proceedings and precedents. Many members ask us, "Oh, do you have an example of a kind of draft bill, or example on environmental law or budgetary law that were presented at this point in this forum in which we could amend this in the rules of procedure to the debate were drafted like this or that?" And right now, it's very difficult to have access to this information. Basically, we have to rely on our memory. Oh, I've seen an example of this kind of draft bill that took this proceeding on the floor, that received this kind of amendments at this stage of the legislative proceedings. And we are trying to develop to think how about AI could help us to identify these new procedures, digital procedures, developed especially after 2014, that could show the precedents, the practice, the legislative practice of the houses to make it simpler to attend this demanding demands, if I can say that. And one second example, just to finish this brief remarks, which are thinking about to better respond to these members of parliament and staff demands, is about budgetary and executive foresight. Uh, we have basically lots of demands on how, for example, one specific amendment tabled for the budgetary law will produce or has been producing effect on a public policy. We have a lot of information that's on the executive, from municipalities, from state level administration, but it's very hard to process all this data. So when we're talking about budgetary law and execution, we are trying to think here how AI could help us to make sense of this large amount of data.
Thank you so much, Victor, for your considerations. Mark, before I yield the floor to you, allow me to make a brief comment to make your life a little bit harder on your answer. But basically, from what the colleagues just said here, I'm taking a few notes on first. Members, they have an infinite number of services in Parliament, ranging from having a legal counsel from the legislative drafters even to booking a room for the committee, for example, among many others, on how to furniture the office, how to hire people, etc. So I'm remembering a discussion that we had 2 months ago with the legislative counsel from the U.S. House, with Chris Henry, with Ludovic, with yourself,
Yeah.
on the complexities on how to use AI on this, because members not all, members, they know how to be members. They are politicians. They represent a segment of this of our society, but not necessarily they know where to click to find a specific service. So, how do you think AI can help in that? And specifically in your area, which is drafting, how can AI and other emerging technologies can help organize the legal legislative council, which is the core business of the parliament?
Right, right. Thank you, Luis. It's funny. I was thinking of the same conversation
Estaba
we had
pensando
on.
en la misma conversación.
I was thinking of the same conversation about request management and that we had, and how that is a great way of kind of framing this issue. How do clerk's offices, legislative council, parliamentary council offices handle all of the requests they get for all kinds of different things, not just drafting legislation, but yes, booking a room, such a range. And so I think there's a great promise for AI and enhanced technologies to assist with that, and we're seeing some of that now in some of the governments we work with. The technology for workflow and those kinds of applications continue to get better and better. But one of the things that we see, well, actually, before I get to that, there's kind of a core thing that I think we're all trying to protect in some of these offices, and there's a term that Wade Ballou, the Legislative Counsel of the U.S. House, likes to use, which is contemplative time. For legislative counsel, we're always trying to figure out ways to preserve and expand contemplative time so that those who are doing these tasks, like drafting legislation and fielding the requests that come in, have more time to think about what they're doing. And it's quite a treasured resource and to protect, because you need your drafters, for example, to be able to really think in expansive ways. Yes, AI can start and is starting to help with that in lots of different little ways. And I think as I said, there's lots of promise. But we also have to keep in mind that so much of this is a human issue, and about how we kind of think about and establish priorities in offices and legislative bodies that are represented through rules and procedures. And we also have to remember too that it seems with technology enhancements, the same rule applies there that applies with highway expansion. We all tend to love it when a highway gets expanded from 2 to 3 to 4 lanes, because it will make more room for us to go faster and better and so forth. Those lanes always fill up. When you create more efficiencies, the requests tend to mount. And so what we have found, when you create more efficiencies in bill drafting and ability to get bills out faster, the request for more bills tends to go up. So we need, which again points to this is a human issue, that we need to think about how we establish our priorities, how we manage those priorities, and have our technologies reflect that. So, but Luis, that's a great point to bring up, that it really is very similar to that discussion we had a few months ago. One last note, Victor, thank you for your English. It is wonderful. We very much appreciate the English speakers here.
Thank you so much, Mark, for your considerations. Mark, I'd like to bring my next question to you with the comments from the colleagues. And as you mentioned, the central role of human resources and the successful integration of AI and other emerging technologies within the parliamentary operation, a key aspect is the capacity building of both institutional staff and MP staff as well. I mean, in your perspective, what are the most effective strategies for equipping the personnel in the parliament with the necessary skills and knowledge, not only to utilize these new tools effectively, but also to contribute to their development and refinement? And if I may ask, if you can give the example from the comparative print suite, which has an element of capacity building as well in the U.S. Congress, I think it would be a great example for the colleagues to learn as well.
Sure. Well, I'll first start with kind of the core thing for staff members, and particularly in the space that we're in, where we're dealing with technology and technology staff. is for governments, for legislatures to allocate enough funding, time, budget for training for staff, for internal staff, to really be able to get outside of government and get a greater understanding of technologies that are becoming available, the good parts about them, the bad parts about them, and really understand the range of tools that are out there. Because I think that the more exposure they have to emerging technologies, the better they'll be able to make decisions about which technologies to employ as they move forward. So I think that there needs to be an environment of constant learning. You think about what we were talking about a year ago in technology and legislative technology. It wasn't about generative AI. We were talking about other things. We were talking about remote deliberation technology and how to do that. And so I think a key thing is that we create environments of constant learning. One of the things that we do observe is that often technology staffs are kind of trapped by the technology that is in place, and often that is legacy technology, old technology. And that means they don't get an opportunity to get outside of that. They get stuck kind of, working on how to develop macros in WordPerfect, or how to work with, in one legislature we work with, they're still on an IBM mainframe, how to maintain that. And so they get stuck in there. And then also relying on single vendors who have provided that technology, so they kind of are trapped by whatever technology has been brought by that vendor. So again, coming back to the original point of the more opportunities that we can give to staff to get outside, to learn more, to see and experiment and try new things, the better, and to try pilots and so forth. Talking about the comparative print program we have for the U.S. House Clerk, where we've developed technology and that they're now employing that allows the comparison of drafts of legislation, and then also be able to analyze the impact of legislative provisions on existing law. These are tools that we have worked with the clerk to develop. And one of the key things we've done there, and it's really been game-changing technology, and it's moving through pilot stages and user group tests and so forth, and soon will be more fully implemented. And it's a game changer for transparency and for understanding the impact of laws. But one of the things we've been doing there is really transferring knowledge of that technology to the internal staff and giving them opportunity and over time to really master that technology. And that's really a critical step that I think has to happen with everything that we're doing with new technologies as it comes to the legislative process.
Thank you so much, Mark, for your consideration. Eric, would you like to comment on this issue as well?
Sure, thank you. And I guess I would say, as with the introduction of any new technology or new processes, a strong change management strategy is really required. So AI will obviously change the way we work, but especially it will pivot our workplace and our workforce to more higher value work. And I really like the term that you mentioned, Mark, about giving people more contemplative time. I think that's an excellent way to describe it. And to again your point, Mark, training obviously is a essential piece of that. We will have to train our House administration staff in terms of new developments and the like, but also eventually training for members of parliament and their staff, just like we did with them when we moved to hybrid parliamentary proceedings and started to use a voting application. And these are things that our parliament decided to keep as permanent features. A lot of parliaments I know post-COVID have gone back to the old ways of working, only in-person meetings and the like. Our parliament has decided, no, it's going to continue with hybrid. So again, similar training was required for both staff and for members when we developed things in the past or recent past, such as electronic notices or electronic petitions. So we want to build on these successes. And one of the key successes that we found is, again, as I mentioned a bit earlier, is embedding our digital, our technical savvy staff with the business teams through what we call a product line model. And these agile teams work together, they see continuous feedback, and they bite off little bits and pieces as opposed to taking on a big project, and constantly adapting as things move forward. So it's important to keep the subject matter experts involved as things change, to get their buy-in. So as an example, when we, or as we're about to launch the parliamentary publications team is going to have automatic speech recognition technology introduced into their workplace. We had them involved from the get-go in terms of how that could be done. They saw what the new workflow would be, potential improvements. We sought their feedback and their commentary as we built ultimately a new system. And so this, again, this whole change management approach and getting employees to buy in ultimately leads to what we hope will be better success. So maybe I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric, for your remarks. Vitor, would you like to share your thoughts on this question as well?
Okay. And first of all, thank you, Mark, for a compliment. I'm trying my best here to be up to you here, but we'll get there. We'll get there. I would prefer to talk in Portuguese since everybody's talking their own native language, but okay, let's do it nonetheless. No problem at all. Thank you. And here at the Senate, we are very much concerned about our staff colleagues using especially large language models unsupervised and without the, let's say, digital education for it. For example, we were asked by a colleague who works at the Foreign Relationships Committee, how could he use it, one of these popular LLMs? And we were categorically negative on the response. You should not use it because you have classified information in our committee. You have very sensitive information in our committee. So right now we are internally giving courses to all our staff members, to members of parliament, to kind of educate them, to explain to them what is this new generative AI technology, which information can you use as an input for it, and what should be your expectations when it comes about output. We also had an example of a colleague who drafted an AI assisted drafted speech and presented to us for us to evaluate, and there were clearly information that was a delusion from the model. Some statistics, some numbers that made no sense, and the person who is a senior member of staff with more than who has more than 20 years of experience in drafting speeches could not immediately see the problems on this draft. So right now we are focusing on this first stage of introduction of AI in our activities on digital technological education for our staff members. And I'd say at the second stage of this reception of the new technology, we are working with multidisciplinary groups. We have, and we are very proud of it, a very large IT member, a very large IT department here at the Federal Senate, which is named Prodazen. I don't know if you've ever heard about it, but it's a very large department. It was created in the 1970s, and right now they are working with different colleagues from the legal department, from the political science department, the research service, the library, to think about how AI and new technology will shape our work, and I'd say in the very near future, 2 years or less right now. So we have these multidisciplinary working groups who are trying to develop new solutions, new tools to implement in the Brazilian Senate. But I would stress that we are right now really working hard to explain to the average staff member what is generative AI, which inputs can you make on it, and which outputs could you reasonably expect to get from this model.
Thank you so much, Vitor, for your considerations. José Pedro, would you like to share your comment about this topic as well?
Sí, muchas gracias, Luis. Han sido
Thank you very much. It has been very interesting to listen to your interventions. And it's a subject, it's a very important matter when it comes to training of the staff. I mean, the the staff and the legislators, we have a training department. And in my humble opinion, I think the first thing is to look, even though we already have an IT department, as Victor said in Parliament, we need to look for the right profiles of the staff members who will adapt to these technologies. And as I said in previous interventions, when I talked about the electronic file that had been created by the staff, the empowering that has to exist about this, we'll know, all of us here in this panel, even Mark is aware that in Parliament we say that maybe if it was done this way and it has been done this way our whole lives, why do we have to change it? Why do we have to make it do it in a different way? Because that's the way we tend to think. But I would do this in 2 stages, the artificial intelligence, if it comes in order to improve. First, training, especially for the IT team that we have in order to work on this. And then another step, and take this to the legislator staff teams, not them directly. Maybe I don't agree with my colleagues on this, but I think legislators are there for the macro subjects. The micro subjects should be managed by their staff, the ones writing the bills, people who make the office of the legislator work. So we had for a long time in several areas, and at the beginning of the periods of legislation, we would train the staff that would work with the legislator and told them about the web pages where they could find different projects, different forms to present, and that lasted for a week or two before starting the periods. Today, with artificial intelligence, it would help us to make this more practical and to give them the chance to use the technology to have a better transparency in Parliament.
David, would you like to share your thoughts and close this round?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll just start with a comment on language as well. I was reflecting as we were talking about the various languages people are speaking in. My Spanish-backed grandfather would be very disappointed that I need to rely on an interpreter to understand languages other than English. I agree with everything that's been said so far. And I suppose rather than repeating it, I think my main point is that artificial intelligence or other technology is only as good as we train it to be. I think that's particularly true of AI, but of earlier technologies as well. And I mentioned a chatbot that it's just an experiment. Don't have any particular plans for it at the moment, but it is absolutely convinced that the head of state of New Zealand is the late Queen Elizabeth II, and nothing that we do will convince it otherwise. So that's not its fault. It's not actually intelligent. It's our fault. We just can't explain it well enough. So I think it's really important that there's really close relationships between people who develop technology and the staff in the Parliament who are actually going to use it. And these things need to be led by the parliamentary business, these developments. Technology is great and we should embrace it, but I don't think the decisions about how to use it should be made by parliamentary practitioners, elected members and parliamentary staff, and more so than by providers who can tell us what's possible and can reflect what we'd like in the technology we have. But I do think it's really important that it's business led. And I was also thinking about in preparing for this session, in April of this year, there were some guidelines on the introduction and use of artificial intelligence in the parliamentary workspace that were released, and I think some people here will be familiar with those. One of the things I thought that was useful in that is it talked about the need to preserve human values, including human autonomy, and so that we're really clear about who the decision makers are. And as I said, I don't feel that there's a threat from AI in terms of it replacing us all. I do think it can be a really helpful tool. I think it can help us focus on doing the higher level and better and more engaging work. And it can do a lot of the other work we don't really like to, but have to do, and it will do it without complaining. So, and 24 hours a day. So I think there's, there's a lot of value to be had, so long as we just get it right to start with, to involve parliamentary practitioners in the development right from the start, to closely align them with the people with the technical ability to deliver these solutions. And I mean, that is my experience of how we do things. I just think it's probably particularly important as we get into these new sorts of technology.
Thank you so much, David, for your considerations and for closing this round. Well, as I see that we are reaching the end of our time, I'd like to propose that we jump the fourth question and move to the last one, so we have more time for this discussion. I will ask this last question with the first answer to José Pedro. José Pedro, an important consideration is maintaining the rich heritage and traditions that define the legislative institutions, as David said, the human element. Parliaments, with their long-standing stories, operate on established processes and cultural norms. So my question to you is, how do you envision integrating AI into this traditional framework, while also ensuring the unique identity and time-honored practices of your parliament are preserved and respected? So my question is not specifically on what there is already, but how do you envision, let's say, the next 5, 10 years in the future, this process moving forward?
Sí, gracias, Luis. A ver,
Thank you, Luis.
el mundo no es estático, ¿no? O sea, el mundo
The world
evoluciona.
isn't fixed or static, it evolves. And with the world, we evolve as well. In general, there are so many things happening. We experienced a pandemic nobody was expecting, and it made us use other technologies that we weren't prepared to use. And we thought that we needed to rush to use them. And for us, our case in Uruguay, which is a very small country, we continued working as we did. But my neighbors, Argentina, Brazil, Chile, they already had it. Other countries as well. They had to adapt, and they had to do it fast so that the parliaments would be able to work, and so that they are not left in a situation that wasn't foreseen. They were not prepared for that. And why am I saying all of this? From now to 5 to 10 years in the future, we don't know what is going to happen, but we do know that the world is evolving. Artificial intelligence has been installed in the world, and we know the chat. Well, we have so many tools that are starting to be used, and people are getting to know them, and we need to get ready. We cannot deny ourselves and not be prepared and not adapt to it. For sure, we need to do it. We need to handle this as human beings. There should always be a human being behind all of this technology, and to be able to adapt it to the functioning of the parliament. But this shouldn't be left in the hands of those machines. I know I took a very big step here with the statement I just gave, but you never know. You never know what could happen from now to 10 years. But once again, I insist, we cannot deny that it is here, is around the corner, it's knocking on the doors of the parliament, telling us that this technology wants to get in. And let's see how we welcome it. And when it does, we use it to adapt the parliament to, so that is useful for citizens, for the citizenship.
I'd like to invite you now to share your comments. Specifically, you are leading the charge on the Artificial Intelligence Committee in the Senate. So are these discussions taking place in the committee? How do you see them moving forward?
So thank you, Luis. I took part. I was as one of the experts who helped draft this initial draft bill for AI. But this piece of legislation, this draft right now, which is being discussed here at the Senate, is a general one. I don't think we had much discussion on the experts committee about AI on Parliament, which was, in my point of view, a flaw of our process. But nonetheless, there were many topics from a broad general perspective, so we didn't have much time to discuss on each specific use of AI and new technologies, especially on Parliament. But to make my point here, in 5 or 10 years, I would probably bet that technology, artificial intelligence, or whatever come next, will make Parliament more efficient. It will make Parliament more, the parliamentary activity cheaper in a sense, a budgetary sense, financial sense, in terms of cost. It will make it more faster. But I don't think that the problems of our Parliament, at least in Brazil, and I know in some countries, is making just Parliament more efficient. Efficiency is one value, of course, but it's not the only core value of Parliament when you think about their history, centuries-old history. When we talk about Parliament, its core values, of course, is efficiency, but it's also democracy, transparency, bringing people together. I think one of the main opportunities that we have here with technology is how to, let's say, how to bridge the gap between parliaments and constituencies. We should not make Parliament just more effective, faster, and efficient in any sense, but to make them more democratic with new technological tools. I think this will be the main challenge. At least in Brazil, we've seen here the remote deliberation system. It has made our Parliament more faster, efficient. We approved many bills in terms of productivity, but I would not say necessarily that we are more democratic in different senses that we can give to the expression that we were before this new technology. So I think the main challenge will be not only to make it more efficient, which I'm pretty sure we'll get there, but to make it more democratic. How to use technology to bridge this gap between parliaments, between representatives and constituencies. How can make it more, have more social participation, more transparent, how to listen better to people in these new e-democracy tools. I think the main challenge will be on this direction.
Thank you so much, Vitor. David, before I yield the floor to you, I just remembered that last conversation we had with Natalie Foster from the House of Commons, with Ari Hershowitz as well, on two topics. First one on the efficiency on resource relocation in the parliament in the future with using AI. And this element that Vitor just brought on the parameters to evaluate this efficiency. For example, is the number of bills something to be considered? The time the MP is in the plenary? I personally don't think so, but so what is your vision about this? So what do you envision for the future, considering these elements for resource relocation, on the new parameter to evaluate the efficiency of this implementation? So how do you see the future in 5-10 years for the parliament using AI?
Oh, thank you. That's a really good question. And a lot of the comments that Victor was making really resonated with me as well. My predecessor, Mary Harris, who was the clerk of the House before me, would often comment that parliaments are not efficient institutions and they're not designed to be. They debate things many times, they take time to consider things, and they test them, and they put up opposing points of view. And those are all features of democracy, they're not flaws. And really, I see the future is that we can get information to people more quickly. We can help them understand things better. We can hopefully improve the quality of the discourse by some of those tools. But I don't see that the ultimate goal is just making everything faster. That plays into the hands of, certainly in our Westminster derived system, plays into the hands of the government of the day, who have an interest in passing, their whole policy program as quickly as they can. And they naturally have much less interest in that being scrutinised and criticised than other parties in the parliament would like to do. So I do think those cultural norms that the question initially talked about are an important part of this, that testing and debating and somewhat inefficient system of doing that is actually something we want to preserve and cherish. And I think where the efficiency can help is in getting information to people more quickly and in perhaps helping them understand it, not in making the parliamentary machine go faster in all of its aspects. I do think that's really important. And again, I think it comes back to it being led by parliamentary practitioners. It shows the importance of all of these changes being people-driven, because people understand those cultural norms, and they differ between all of our parliaments. Even ones that have similar roots, like Eric's and mine, do things differently, and they have different cultures overlaying those things. So I do think that that's going to be really important, and we really need to make sure that we get buy-in from the public, and particularly from elected members as well as staff before we make these changes. And I do see that clerks and clerks and secretaries general are guardians of this. MPs make big decisions. They should focus on those macro issues, as has been said. But I think making sure that the Parliament runs effectively and efficiently, in the sense that we get the maximum output for the resource that's being invested, I think is really important. But I do think we should keep in mind it's not about just driving the whole system more quickly.
Thank you so much, David, for your considerations. Mark, would you like to comment on that as well?
Sure, I'd love to. It does seem we're in a kind of a familiar phase that we tend to go through with new technologies when they're released and come at us, where we're in this kind of chaos stage, where it has this attraction. It's amazing. It will cure all. It will do this and that. You want to make it do this, make it do that, see if it works there, and so forth. So we're all experimenting with it and playing with it. But we do need to keep in mind, as I think the tenor of this discussion showed, it's not about playing. These are real things that are being touched by AI, and it's having an impact already. And we're seeing through this chaos phase some good things coming out, some very bad things, some comical things. When someone tries to draft a bill using AI and it completely goes haywire and it hallucinates and it cites laws that don't actually exist. That's kind of funny. But it's also, a very serious issue to think about, which really comes back to, if we want to project where we may be in a few years, it comes down to right now thinking hard about governance, thinking hard about what kind of rails we put around AI, which I know they'll have to change over time, but at least as a starting point, we need to think about, how humans will stay in control of it, and how we remember the core principles and why we're here, why we're doing these things. And I think, Victor, you said it so well, which is that, this is about establishing better connections between members and their constituencies, establishing, better rules about how things should go, establishing things that will help democracy instead of harm it. We're in a somewhat perilous time these days, with some governments tilting away from democratic norms. And so we have to think about these technologies really in ways to increase transparency, to increase better government for the people, and how they can better be connected to their members and their representatives. So I think that's my hope, is that as we move forward over time, we keep these things in mind. We create better systems of governance over this kind of technology and all kinds of technologies, and remember the impact it will have on just the very process of government.
Thank you so much, Mark, for your considerations. Eric, allow me to invite you to share your thoughts on this matter and close this round as well. So please feel free to use the floor.
Great. Thank you very much, and great comments made to date on this question. I would perhaps say, yes, parliaments have their ways of doing things. They have their traditions, but I would argue that parliaments are also very adaptable. I think we all saw that during the pandemic, how we all very quickly saw parliaments pivot to hybrid proceedings and the like. Yes, AI might bring risks, but it also brings all sorts of opportunities to us in terms of doing things better and quicker for our parliamentary clients and for the public in general. I'm pretty sure in 5, 10, 20 years, we will still have 3 readings for each bill at the House with an extensive committee examination in the middle. I don't think AI will change that, but AI will perhaps help us kind of in the behind the scenes work that's done to support those readings in the committee stage, help us help our clients do that work better and more efficiently. So I think that's perhaps what we should be focusing on. Transparency, efficiencies, etc. In terms of our staff, I think our workforce is going to be impacted somewhat organically, if you will, given the integration of AI into current tools or future versions of tools that we already use. We recently had a bit of a retreat, a meeting of the minds between staff from procedural services, our law clerk's office, the IT folks, the communications people, some outside experts, to really put their minds together to look at how we can develop at the House of Commons a common vision and some kind of, to your point, Mark, about governance and how we can put in governance in terms of how to address AI. Parliamentarians as well, they are pushing on the issue, in part perhaps due to demographics. Younger, more tech-savvy parliamentarians are going to push that we use technology, or that we offer to them the opportunities to use technology better and quicker, while at the same time respecting certain traditions and heritage, if you will, of the House. We recently, to that point, had a number of parliamentarians create, about 6 months ago, a caucus, an all-party caucus that they have named the Parliamentary Caucus on Emerging Technologies. So this was an entirely member-driven initiative. We weren't involved, but of course we're keeping a close eye on it to see the discussions they have and how we can then leverage or work with that. So I think I'll end it there. My time is up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric, for closing this round with your comments. We are reaching the end of our panel today. Just before we go, very briefly, I'd like to yield the floor to each one of you for no longer than 1 minute for any final considerations or final thoughts. I'll do this alphabetically again. David, would you like to share any final thoughts, any final considerations in 1 minute, please?
Well, thank you. And look, thanks to all the panelists and Luis for hosting this session. I've really enjoyed it, and it's given me some things to think about, but also shown there's a lot of similar work going on all around the world, or certainly in the countries represented here today. And I think it is, as others have said, an exciting opportunity. Things are going to happen. Things are, technology is knocking at the door. We shouldn't ignore it. We shouldn't be scared of it. I just think we should use it on our own terms. And picking up on Eric's point, parliaments are institutions that adapt and change. Things don't remain the same. While there might be some cultural norms that sit across the top of it, we adapt our procedures, often because we want to, because we see things can be done better, and sometimes because we have to, because we face challenges like the pandemic. I really think there's a really good opportunity here with some of these emerging technologies, particularly generative AI, to really assist our parliaments in new ways. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, David. Eric, would you like to share any final considerations or final thoughts on today's debate?
Sure, I would perhaps just echo David's comments. This has been time really, really well spent. Thank you very much. To the point that, yes, we all have different parliamentary systems. Some are Westminster-based, some are not, but ultimately we have a very similar clientele. We have very similar challenges. So it's so useful, so fascinating to see how we are all tackling these very similar challenges. So thank you so much, Luis and your team, for having organized this. And I look forward very much, as does my team, to future such seminars, because again, there's so much to learn from this, and things are evolving so quickly. It's great that we can continuously share and learn from each other. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Eric, for your participation, for your comments. José Pedro, would you like to share any final considerations or final thoughts?
Sí, muchas gracias, Luis. También
Yes.
me sumo a
Thank you.
como de Eric.
I echo the words of David and Eric.
La posibilidad de poder
I
participar
would like to thank you all for the participation here, to be part of this instance. And with these experiences, you realize how behind you are in terms of technology sometimes, and what's to come, how we should prepare for the future, how to receive these new technologies. It is around the corner, as David said. And so we need to put attention to that. We need to participate. And so that when this technology comes and installs itself in the parliament, everyone will be aware and be ready to receive it, specifically democracy. I would like to thank Luis for the invitation, Busola Tech for allowing me to participate
poder participar en este tan prestigioso panel. Y si me
and
permite
to be part of this prestigious panel,
decirle a Eric que bueno,
and to tell Eric, if God wants, we'll see each other in Geneva in March, and we will be able to exchange a lot of situations about the parliament and about artificial intelligence. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Mark, would you like to share your thoughts, or your final thoughts or final considerations as well?
Sure. Thank you, Luis, and thank you to all the panel members for another great Brussels Tech discussion. I think it is such a rare and great thing that we get to convene like this on a regular basis on a variety of subjects related to legislative technology. There's really very few other places that allow us to do this so well. And it's so important given the pace of change and how quickly these technologies come at us, the opportunities, the threats, the really exciting things that are happening out there. Luis, my only thought is that perhaps on AI, we should just have this panel every 2 weeks, because the things are changing so rapidly, might work better that way. But more seriously, thank you again for putting this together. And many thanks to the interpreters who did a great job in helping all of us understand each other as we talk across the world. So thanks.
Thank you, Mark, for your considerations. Vitor, would you like to share your final thoughts as well? Vitor, você está no mudo.
I would like to thank you once again, Luis, and all the Busolatec staff, the interpreters, my panel colleagues, David, Eric, Mark, and Jose Pedro. It was a very fruitful evening for me here. And when we think about technology, I think we should ask ourselves how technology can make our lives easier, how can we do the same things, but faster, in an easier way, cheaper way, and how can it make our lives different? How can it enhance us to do different things that we could not do before? So I think parliaments also have to make these questions themselves. How can it make parliaments, democracy life easier and different? And I think today we had an interesting discussion about it, which I'm very grateful for. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Vitor. If you allow me just a few moments to make my gratitude known to the interpreters as well. Mr. Marcial de Diaz, to meet América Soto, Valentina Gongora, Paulina Cerda, and Liliane Cerda as well. Thank you for making it possible, as Mark said, for us to be able to talk in multiple languages throughout this debate. Thank you also for our partners, the Chamber of Deputies in Chile for supporting us, the Organization of American States, and the CONACATI as well here in Brazil, and also for our strategic partners to Essential Legislative Technologies, to Nova Works Australia, and to Double.ai. So thank you so much, all of you, for participating. And just remember, colleagues, that we have another session tomorrow about how to preserve our legislative procedures in the emergence of AI. I will be the moderator again. We are going to welcome Mr. Kevin McCumber, the clerk of the U.S. House of Representatives, Mr. Brent Bergottini from Essential Legislative Technology, Mr. Miguel Landeros from the Chamber of Deputies in Chile, Mr. Pedro Deneri from the National Assembly of Angola, and Dr. Juan de Dios Cinconegui from the Universidad Austral in Argentina. Thank you all very much. It was an immense pleasure to moderate all of you today. And I hope we can see each other in person in the near future to continue this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Record.